Untold narratives lie ahead. I partially fastened my backpack and fell silent. Sarah appeared in the doorway. "You were correct," I admitted, pushing forward a folder containing documents. "Coexistence doesn't necessitate touch, but it is essential for me to maintain investments in this house." She didn't raise her voice or move closer. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe, her arms limp as if discussing bills. A bank statement peeked out of the folder, one you only print when you want tangible evidence beyond your thoughts. A few weeks prior, I had reached for her unintentionally. Nothing significant, just habit. She evaded me without turning around. "Don't." I froze. She continued, composed, almost indifferent. "It's merely your desire for touch. Don't turn it into an issue." I nodded, neither consenting nor contradicting, simply recognizing the stipulation. Since then, I ceased to reach out, stopped brushing against her, stopped questioning her plans for the day. I continued to pay what I consistently paid, slept in my usual spot, and refrained from any unwarranted physical touch. This seemed to calm her down. It was evident as she stopped vigilantly guarding her phone, laughed freely at messages without hushed tones, and the apartment began to feel more like a home than a temporary dwelling. One evening, as I zipped up my bag, she finally spoke. "What are you up to, Mark?" I shouldered my backpack and looked at her, already aware that she wouldn't appreciate the response she was about to receive. A few weeks prior, this situation didn't appear dramatic. It was late, the kind of quiet evening where the television remained off and the building could be heard settling. Sarah stood at the counter, scrolling idly, her shoulders relaxed, already absorbed in another world. Without thought, I moved closer and wrapped an arm around her waist, a casual gesture that was familiar to us both thousands of times before. She reacted instantly, not hastily or angrily, but enough to break the connection. I recoiled my hand as if it had been burned. Eventually, she faced me, her expression serene, almost teaching-like she was adjusting a setting on a device. "It's merely affection," she mentioned casually. "Why are you turning this into a problem?" I didn't contest, I didn't press. I remained there, gave a brief nod, and allowed the situation to unfold as she seemed to desire. She resumed scrolling. I returned to the couch. The gap between us appeared small, but it felt deliberate, calculated, purposeful. Following that, I adapted. I ceased attempting to grasp her in doorways, stopped bumping into her deliberately. I stopped deciphering her gestures and began regarding the space between us as a warning sign. No contact meant no contact. Straightforward guidelines, simple to adhere to, and something changed. Sarah seemed less burdensome. She navigated the apartment without seeking me out. She chuckled more at her phone. She accepted calls without departing the room. She assimilated herself into this revamped relationship of ours, as if she'd persuaded me to cease using a language she never mastered. One evening, her phone flashed on the coffee table while she was showering. Instead of hastening to retrieve it or inquiring about the caller later, she simply let the notifications persist until they ceased. That's when I understood that she hadn't deprived me of something. Rather, she had liberated herself from pretending its significance mattered. From then on, I became easier to cohabit with, not distanced or frigid, but streamlined. I tidied up my messes. I settled my bills promptly. I stopped prying about her whereabouts and expected returns. The type of man who no longer needs explanations. Sarah observed this change in behavior. It was evident by the way she ceased monitoring her speech around me. She began answering phone calls from the couch instead of the hallway. She'd chuckle at messages without hiding the screen. On one occasion, she burst into genuine laughter and shook her head as if someone had said something perfectly apt. I remained unresponsive. That was the strategy I employed. Maintaining a neutral demeanor, adhering to a consistent routine, and returning home as promised were key. Sleeping on my own side of the bed and allowing distance to solidify into an official state may have appeared like acceptance to her. A month slipped by in this manner, long enough for patterns to set in, long enough for her to stop viewing our marriage as something requiring management. She began leaving earlier, dressing with purpose, and inspecting herself in the mirror as if for someone observant. One afternoon, she flung her phone onto the counter and announced, "I might be late tonight." No excuse offered, no apology tendered, merely a statement. I responded without glancing up. Later that night, while on my way home, I paused outside a bar, my gaze inadvertently drawn by a shoulder posture that seemed vaguely familiar. I hadn't sought her out, had no expectations. I was beyond the entrance when a recognizable slant in the shoulder made me halt. Looking through the window pane, I observed Sarah chuckling closely with a man opposite her. Casually and as if rehearsed, she smoothed his collar. This action didn't provoke anger within me. Instead, it solidified my convictions. I withdrew my phone, composed the shot via the glass, and gently pressed the screen once, knowing precisely what subsequent steps were required. I neither reproached her nor exhibited the photo, neither shifted my voice nor altered plans. In fact, I grew even more accommodating. The image remained confined to my device's storage, nestled amidst receipts and grocery lists, a place where it rightfully belonged. Evidence isn't meant for display. It's designed to stay hidden and bide its time. That evening, Sarah returned home later than typical, carrying her shoes, moving quietly and cautiously as if not to disturb anything. She cast a glance my way, seated on the couch, sizing me up. I raised my eyes, nodded once, and returned to my activities. No animosity, no inquiries. Her shoulders loosened. The following days adhered to the same pattern. She departed prematurely, returned belatedly, and conducted an increased number of calls in the open. Her voice altered noticeably when specific names appeared, becoming lighter, even hinting at amusement. She no longer engaged in violent acts. There was no need to. As she believed, the line she had established resolved all issues. Then she brought up the subject of her training. It slipped out unintentionally, amidst a sentence while making coffee. "I have a work commitment away from home," she said. "Couple of days could be beneficial for a fresh start." I observed her stirring the cup, exhibiting a calm demeanor already lost in thought. "That sounds good," I replied. She grinned at my response, not out of gratitude, but relief, as if anticipating resistance, and was content to find none. She discussed schedules, hotel arrangements, and how busy the days would be. I paid attention, nodded, stored the information away. That evening she prepared for her journey with the door open. No secrets. No haste. After fastening her bag, she momentarily halted, gazed at me, and asked, "All set between us?" I returned her gaze and responded truthfully, "We're coping." She departed the following day under the belief she had adequately prepared me. What she failed to perceive was that she had granted me time. As soon as the door shut, the apartment fell silent, a sensation I hadn't experienced in months. Not lonely, clarity. Instead of settling, I stood motionless. I didn't linger. I retrieved the backpack from the closet and arranged all items on the table as if preparing for work. The folder lay open flat. Documents, statements, accounts that bore my name due to her prioritizing convenience over structure. Automatic payments she hadn't inquired about, transfers she believed were permanent because they had persistently existed. I logged into each account, methodically and cautiously, making alterations that seemed subtle on the screen but would have a significant impact in reality. I wasn't seizing anything that wasn't mine. I was organizing things, disengaging from autopilot braking habits that only functioned if we both ignored potential changes. My phone vibrated once. A message from her, already a long day. I didn't respond immediately. I completed my task first, verified everything twice, logged out, shut the folder. When I finally responded, it was brief, "Rest well." The following 2 days were uneventful. Went to work, came home, slept soundly. No surprises, no second thoughts. Neither the person she expected nor the one I am now wanted to return. On the third night, I examined the photo once more, not for feelings, but as a reminder of why timing was crucial. I placed my phone on the coffee table, screen off, and waited. Just after 2 in the morning, I heard the key turn in the lock, already knowing that she wouldn't ask any questions when she entered. I sat in the armchair when she walked in. The single light from the nearby lamp illuminated the room. The phone lay on the table between us, its screen now visible. She paused at the doorway, her bag still slung over her shoulder, taking in the scene as though she already knew the harm that had been done. She didn't inquire about the phone or my wakefulness. Instead, her gaze traveled to the screen and then back to me, causing a subtle change in her stance. "Did you go through my things?" she questioned, not accusing but seeking boundaries. "No," I replied. "That was sufficient." She breathed out slowly and put down her bag, moving cautiously as if the rules of the room had been altered and she was adapting to them instantly. She settled on the edge of the couch without being summoned. "I told you it was for work," she said, not defensive but matter of fact. I remained silent. Silence often speaks volumes. She looked around the apartment then, observing details that had previously gone unnoticed. The vacant space on the shelf caught her eye. The absent folder, the hushed rhythm of a locale devoid of assumed consistency. Her voice softened. "What transpired, Mark?" I eased back in my seat and scrutinized her as she had me for weeks. Composed, impassive, concluded. "I ceased capital investments," I responded. "You mentioned that affection was no longer part of the arrangement." That's when it dawned on her, not the photograph, not the timing. The revelation that the life she'd been savoring had just run out of resources. She rose abruptly, traversed the room, and attempted to touch me instinctively, her fingers grazing my arm like a slumbering memory awakening tardily. I stepped aside, and for the first time she appeared terrified. Her hand lingered in the air for a moment after I retreated, as if it couldn't quite fathom the miss. Then she withdrew it and emitted a gentle, discordant laugh. "All right," she murmured. Let's postpone this for later. She roamed the room once, then again, her gaze sweeping over what had changed. The quietness bore down, absence of melodies, absence of ambient sounds, nothing to cushion the void between us. She eventually spoke up, "You're being excessive. This doesn't need to become a drama." I left my place, walked past her, and grabbed the bag from where it rested against the wall. The burden felt fitting, realistic. I casually shouldered it without haste. Her tone shifted then, not louder but edgier. "Are you really leaving?" I remained silent. I opened the door gently, allowing light from the hallway to flood in. It was then she seemed to comprehend the reality of the situation. She approached the doorway. "Mark," she called out, employing my name like she used to when she desired something to resonate. I thought we had moved beyond this. I readjusted the strap and gazed at her one last time. She wasn't irate now. She wasn't dismissive. She was contemplating, trying to figure out which facet of herself might still function. "I didn't create this into an issue," I said. "I simply ceased bearing it." She slowly nodded, eyes gleaming, seeking non-existent bargaining chips. The apartment behind her seemed diminished, as if it was someone else's already. As I entered the corridor, she grasped for me once more, this time closer, despair slipping past her restraint. It was then that I disclosed what I had previously accomplished. She gripped my sleeve this time, not forcefully, merely enough to halt me. Her fingers were warm, recognizable, now cautious in a manner they hadn't been for months. "Wait," she said. "We don't have to make any decisions tonight." I gazed down at her hand, then back at her face, close up. She was making a great effort to appear reasonable, flexible, ready, the side of her that only emerged when something was on the verge of being lost. "You wanted this not to be an issue," I replied, so I stopped treating it as one. Her grip tightened slightly, suggesting she might negotiate with pressure alone. "You're escalating the situation unnecessarily." I subtly evaded, displacing ourselves just enough to sever contact once more. The gesture was minimal, yet it resonated more powerfully than any dispute could ever manage. She suppressed a gulp. "You needn't depart," she said. "We can sort this out." I adjusted the backpack on my shoulder and reached for the doorknob. The metallic click echoed in the quiet corridor. "I've already taken care of it," I replied. In the background, I heard her breathing alter, becoming irregular as control wavered. She remained stationary, palms empty, acknowledging that whatever she believed needed fixing she had actually completed. As I opened the door, she spoke once more, softer now. "Is this truly the end?" I halted with the door ajar, aware that the response couldn't be contested anymore. I declined to face her when responding. "I prepaid your portion of the rent for the upcoming month." That caught her attention. I sensed it in the silence behind me, the manner in which she reconsidered without uttering a word. "You won't need to provide any explanations to either the landlord or work," I went on. "None at all." She appeared puzzled, taking a step nearer. "What possible reason would there be for such explanations?" I faced her then. "Because the man from the bar is aware that you are married," I clarified. Her features tightened, not with anger but recognition. She recognized immediately who I was referring to. She knew how easily information could spread in such circles. I had sent him the photo without a word, providing just enough context. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The defense she'd been preparing was no longer valid. This wasn't an argument, it was an update. "You didn't have to disclose that," she murmured. "I chose not to," I responded. "I merely ensured everyone had the same information at hand." She scrutinized me, hoping to find something she could twist in her favor. Apologies, affection, past history, none seemed applicable. Her shoulders sagged. "That's it then," she said. This time no query. I placed my palm on the door, sensing its substantial mass, the last obstacle. "That's it," I murmured. She didn't pursue me, didn't stretch out a hand, didn't call my name again. I exited, and the door automatically slid shut. The door closed behind me with a quiet click that scarcely reverberated through the passageway. No bang, no hesitation, just the sound of something being sealed because it no longer needed to remain open. Outside, the night air was crisp and unwavering. The street was largely deserted, a handful of cars moving along, tires droning over asphalt. I readjusted the pack on my shoulder and resumed walking without glancing at my phone or turning back to the building as if it might summon me. At the intersection, I halted for a moment to inhale. Not deeply, not dramatically, just enough to recalibrate my stride. A pair passed by me, walking side by side, hands interlaced unconsciously. I moved aside and let them pass. I climbed into my vehicle, pausing briefly before ignition, palms on the steering wheel. The dashboard illuminated, predictable and indifferent. No demand in sight exceeded my offering. I eased onto the road with the windows ajar, allowing city sounds to echo where dialogues once resided. My dwelling shrank behind me, level by level, becoming merely another structure with intermittent lights. At a traffic light, my phone vibrated once in its holder. I ignored it. Instead, I waited for the light to change. Once green, I continued. By the time I hit the highway, the night had expanded fully. No plans, no reasons, only distance growing silently mile after mile. I wasn't furious. I wasn't at ease. I ended a deal that no longer held sense. For the first time in a while, nothing compelled me to linger. If you're still listening, thank you. Now it's your turn. Express your feelings below. Subscribe. Additional untold narratives are coming up.